Hello and welcome to the Tough Cover Podcast on the Painted Lines. I am your host, Mark Henry Jr., and you can follow me at Mark Henry Jr. _, and you can follow the podcast at Tough Cover Pod, and you can follow the Painted Lines at the Painted Lines. Please give at Everything's Fine a follow, as well as at Fox PHL Gambler, and you can see my content in all of those places, as well as my picks that you will hear today's show. And on today's show, we are red hot in all of the sports, and we are going to go over my picks in the NBA for tonight, my one pick in the NLCS for tonight, and my favorite NBA future bets. We are officially in the sports equinox of the calendar with baseball, basketball, football, and even hockey going on. So there are a ton of sports to bet on. And if you have any bets out there, please leave them in the comments. And if you have any thoughts on my bets, please do tell in the comments as well, or give me a shout on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. But as the Black Eyed Peas said, once they were edited, let's get it started. My first pick at 7 o'clock in the NBA is Hornets money line on the pick'em versus the Indiana Pacers for 2 units. Brogdon is playing today, but you have to imagine he will be a little bit hobbled and a little bit on a minutes restriction coming off of a shoulder injury. Caris LeVert and TJ Warren are out. I think the Hornets could level up this year with a ton of young talent and a couple vets like Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward. These teams finished within a win of each other last year. The Pacers are hurt, and I don't see what's improving. And while I just said the Hornets can improve, so I'm excited about the Hornets, and I'll roll with them tonight for 2 units. At 7:30, I have the Toronto Raptors -2 versus the Wizards for 1.5 units. This is pretty simple. I think the Wizards are going to suck this year. I am really, really low on the Wizards. I have them winning 22 games, which is way, way lower than consensus. And this is Toronto's first game back in Toronto since pre-COVID. The crowd will be rocking, and the Raptors are the better and deeper team, in my opinion. The Raptors win big here. So I'm going with the Raptors -2 versus the Wizards for 1.5 units. At 8 o'clock, the game that we all care about here in Philadelphia, I have the Sixers money line versus the New Orleans Pelicans for 3 units. I locked this in at a pick'em before the Zion injury news last year. So this was the first NBA bet I made of the year, even before I made the bet on the Warriors game last night. The Pelicans are missing Zion and lost Lonzo this offseason and hired a new head coach. They went 1-3 and looked disjointed and horrible in the preseason. I don't think there's any continuity, and there's going to be a lack of chemistry under a new coach with a brand new lineup, missing their main piece and face of the franchise in Zion. I don't think this is a normal opening night where a crowd will be pumped in New Orleans. The fan base has to be deflated that Zion is not around. The Pelicans were 16-20 against the spread at home last year, so I'm not even sure they're a good home team, and that was with Zion. So I think that there's some reasons to fade the Pelicans in this spot. Meanwhile, the Sixers have their own situation that we all are painfully aware of. You might have heard, but Ben Simmons is not here and is suspended for this game and won't be around. And I think vibes will be sky high due to him not making the trip and due to him not being in New Orleans. I always wanted Ben to stay away from the team, and I think that it will help our lineups when Joel is sitting, actually. So I got the Sixers early at a pick'em, but I would take them at -2.5 or -3, or I would take Embiid to double-double in a win at +175. But I'm rolling with Sixers money line. Shout out to Pat Moran for that suggestion. At 8:08, we are going into baseball, and we are talking about the NLCS, and I have the Atlanta Braves +1.5 at the Dodgers for 4 units. The Braves hurt me bad last night, blowing a 5-2 lead in the 8th to lose 6-5. I have them +700 to win the NL. I had the money line last night, but thankfully I also had +1.5. And I have a philosophy in playoff baseball and even playoff hockey. Marky Pucks will come around in about April, May when the playoffs come around. But my philosophy in playoff baseball and hockey is that if you can get a team at +1.5 at -110 or better odds, and you can conceivably see that team winning the game, you have to take it. And usually I would never bet against Julio Urias and the Dodgers, but with the Braves, who have shown they can hit Urias in game 2 in relief, scoring 2 runs in an inning off of him to help win game 2 when Urias blew a save. And they have hit the Dodgers pitching in general and the bullpen at large and have shown that they can beat the Dodgers. So I have to take +1.5 if it's going to be at -110. So Braves +1.5 at the Dodgers for 4 units. And then my best bet, my play of the day, my lock of the night, I have the Sacramento Kings +7 at the Blazers for 4 units. And I also have the Kings +195 on the money line at the Blazers 2 units to win 4 units. This is my best bet. I love backing the Blazers as underdogs and fading them as favorites. The Kings were actually 25-23 as underdogs against the spread last year, while the Blazers were under 500 at 21-22 as a favorite. The Blazers play so many close games that seem to come down to the wire on a Lillard shot or a couple Lillard shots as we've seen in the past. But I'll take the Kings, who have the guards to hang with and compete with the Blazers guards with Fox, Halliburton, Hield, and now Davion Mitchell. I think the Kings not only cover 7, but I think they win this game. And I think this starts a rough Blazers open to the season in general, and hope a rough season in general for the Blazers. I know Lillard said you don't have to worry about him leaving if things go south. Well, let's test that, Dame. Let's see how that goes if you start, 5-10, or let's at least test how much the Blazers will add picks-wise to CJ McCollum and Robert Covington for Ben Simmons. So I think the Blazers start off the season rough. I love the Kings tonight, +7 for 4 units and +195. Kings also have a lot of continuity, not a lot of changes on that roster. So I do think that they know how to play together. I think they could be a lot better this year. I don't think they will be, but they could be. So I'm taking the Kings +7, and I also like the money line. And on that note, I have a why the hell not parlay at +2,900, 29-1. I'll go Braves money line, Kings money line, and I'll throw in Nuggets money line. You could leave the Nuggets out if you want to be a little less crazy and just go Braves Kings. But I went crazy, 1 unit to win 29 units. Braves, Kings, Nuggets, all on the money line, all plus, +180, +210, +205. Those are big underdogs. Throw them in a parlay. 29-1. And then my real parlay that I actually do think is going to hit at +110. I have the Bulls and the Spurs for 3 units. The Bulls are playing the Pistons without Cade. I don't see how they lose that game. The Bulls fan base is rightfully excited for the first time since the Tibbs era. This Bulls team should make the play-in and the playoffs and should take care of business tonight against the Pistons. And the Spurs should take care of business against a young, inexperienced Magic team with no continuity or chemistry under a new coach. So I think both of these teams win to cash a +110 parlay here. Bulls, Spurs, money line parlay. So that brings us to our futures, the futures aspect of this show. I've been pretty good in futures in general. I'm still waiting on a Harper MVP ticket to cash from preseason, but I was good in the MLB. I'm really good in the NBA, not so much in football. I need to stay away from the futures in football and just do the straight bets. But in the NBA, I've been good in the past, so let's give it a try again this year. And I'm going to start with the MVP award, and I like Nikola Jokic to win MVP at +1,600 for 1 unit. I think Giannis is probably the most likely MVP at +700, but that's not good enough value for me to take, especially this early in the season. And Nikola Jokic to repeated MVP at +1,600 is just too juicy. I think he's the best value, more so by eliminating other guys near the top of the list. I don't think the Mavs will be good enough for Luka, who's actually the favorite to win MVP. LeBron won't try for MVP and will sit out enough games, and AD will take votes away. Embiid won't play enough games. If he didn't win it last year, I don't think he ever will. KD won't play enough games, and Harden will cancel out a lot of votes. If Steph didn't win last year, I don't know if he wins this year. Same with Lillard. And I do think Trey at +2,100 to win MVP is, that's a pretty good bet if you think they can be a top 2 or 3 seed. And I think Paul George at +3,600 to win MVP could be a good value if the Clippers surprise without Kawhi. But that means my top 4 would be Giannis, Jokic, Trey, and George. But give me Jokic to repeat his MVP on a 3-seed Nuggets team at +1,600. Especially they're going to have to float around without Jamal Murray. Let's get to some overs and unders on the win totals. I'm going to start with the unders, finish positive with the overs. I like the Minnesota Timberwolves under 35.5 wins for 2 units. This line is wildly high to me. The T-Wolves only would have won 26 games in a full season last year. Remember, they played 72 games, not 82 games. The T-Wolves have won over 35.5 games in just 2 times over the last 7 years, one involving Jimmy Butler. They've went over 35.5 in just 3 of the last 16 years. This is not a successful franchise. You have to play to a 44% win percentage to win 36 games. The T-Wolves are 42-94 in their last 2 years, losing more than twice as many games as they've won, and they've won at a 30.8% clip. I get that people are excited by Anthony Edwards. I get it. He had a cool dunk. He had some good numbers to finish the year, but they went 23-49 with him last year. And Anthony Edwards wasn't exactly a winner in college at Georgia, going 14-12 and 7-11 in a weak SEC. Georgia, with a lot of the same players and no recruit like Edwards, went 14-12 again without him. Anthony Edwards might just be a good stats, bad team guy, just like D'Lo is, and just like Cat, even though I love him, sadly might be. T-Wolves under 35.5. So we got Mondog 42. He said, I took Sixers under 50.5 everywhere I could. Also hoped on T-Wolves over 35 and Wizards over 34.5. I absolutely do not like T-Wolves over or Wizards over. Those are probably two of my favorite unders. The Sixers, I have winning 50 games, so I have them a half game under that. So, and I understand taking the under with all of the drama that's been going on, but I do not like those T-Wolves and Wizards picks. And that gets us to another one, which is Wizards under 34.5. I think they win 22 games. I really think this roster is not very deep. I think they're going to miss Russell Westbrook, who really stepped up for them down the stretch last year because they were really terrible to start that year. They were much better down the stretch when Russell Westbrook started playing well. So I like Wizards under 34.5. I also like Rockets under 27.5 for 2 units. The Rockets would have won 19 games last year in a full season and have they've only added young, inexperienced guys and talent, and they've sent John Wall away to not play. Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. I know Pat Moran loves Alperen Sengun, but they are not leading this team to 28 wins in a tough Western Conference. This is a team that is tanking and trying to be a top 2 pick and a bottom team, and will be around the teens in wins again, in my opinion. So let's move on to my last under, and that is Blazers under 45.5 for 2 units. The Blazers would have won 48 games this last year, but I think the West will be more difficult, and I don't think the Blazers improved at all. I don't think Billups will be a good coach, or at least as good of a coach as veteran Terry Stotts, who provided continuity with that team. I just think we've seen too many early season slow starts from the Blazers too many times. I think they'll be a play-in team, maybe worse, maybe miss the playoffs entirely. So let's get to the overs. Let's get to my favorite overs on the board. Oh, this guy and me just aren't seeing alike on these overs and unders. He said also hopped on the Houston under and Memphis over. Memphis, I don't have a take on. I don't know where that number actually is at, but like I just said, I like the Rockets under. Spurs over 28.5 is actually my favorite future on the board in general. I have it for 2.5 units. The Spurs would have won 38 games last year and the year before in a full 82 game season, as opposed to 72, which is 9.5 games over this disrespectful total. Popovich will not let a team he coaches win less than 28.5 games, and it has not happened since his first year as coach of the Spurs in 1996, 1997, the first year I was alive as a 25-year-old. He said Memphis is 41.5 in the comments here. I have them at 42 wins, so I have them barely over. So there you go. We agree a little bit there. I wouldn't touch it, but I do think that Ja Morant is just too good to deny. The Spurs have won under 40 games in 3 of their last 25 years and never less than 37 in a full season. I get that the roster doesn't look beautiful on paper. It never does, but it doesn't matter. They will compete in the playoffs, surprise a ton of people, and get into the play-in. And if they do, Pop should be the coach of the year, since even Big Vegas doesn't think they're going to be any good. And if I think all that, why not hammer Spurs plus 1,000, 10-1 to make the playoffs for 2 units to win 20? I think it's an insane value, and I'm all in on the 2021-2022 Spurs all of a sudden. So I hope you Twitter nerds who love DeJounte Murray and Derek White are correct. Let's move on to my next one. I have Suns over 51.5 wins for 2 units. The Suns would have won 58 games in a full season last year. Every important player is coming back. You have the whole rotation coming back. Everyone's currently healthy. Monty Williams is a great coach and won't let these guys let up after a finals run. As long as they stay healthy, I really like this over. I don't think Phoenix is being respected and taken seriously enough as a title contender, and I think that they will change that throughout this season. I think Phoenix wins the most games in the NBA and will be around 60 wins. Give me over 51.5 wins. And I also like Pistons over 24.5 wins for 1 unit. The Pistons would have won 23 games in a full season last year. I'll take 25 plus with a new face of the franchise in Cade Cunningham and guys like Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Beef Stew Stewart. They are going to improve, and hopefully they get something out of Killian Hayes. I don't think they'll be one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in basketball. I think Cade will put up numbers and win Rookie of the Year. which there's not much value in at plus 250. So I like Pistons over 24.5 for 1 unit. And now let's close it out with my picks to win the East and West. I like the Bucks plus 425 to win the East for 1 unit. The Bucks look like the best team and the most complete team with absolutely no drama. I think Giannis reached another level in the playoffs, and I think he's going to continue to, as we saw last night. I feel even better about this with the Kyrie shit show in Brooklyn, the Ben shit show in Philadelphia, and I don't buy into Miami, so I don't have to worry about Miami. So do I have to worry about Atlanta? Maybe. Milwaukee handled them in the playoffs last year. I think they do the same again this year. Bucks win the East and repeat as NBA champions, in my opinion. So let's get to the West. I have Suns plus 700 to win the Western Conference for 1 unit. And I also sprinkled Nuggets plus 1,100 for 1 unit to win the Western Conference. I'm not as sure on my Western Conference pick, so I'm kind of splitting my bets here with two, not long shots, but not favorites either. My only take on the West is I'm sure that the Lakers cannot win because I hate the fit and age of that team, and Russ and LeBron is not going to work, as we started to see last night. And I'm also pretty sure that the Utah Jazz are not getting over the hump and never will as currently constructed. If they couldn't beat the Kawhi-less Clippers in the playoffs last year, they're never getting over the hump. And I'm sure that Dallas hasn't given Luka enough to compete in the West. So I think that leaves the team that won the West last year coming back really intact in Phoenix. And I end the team with the reigning MVP that could have competed for a West title with a healthy Jamal Murray last year, who should be back by March and for the playoffs. If the Nuggets can stay afloat as a top 6 seed without Murray and add Murray to Porter Jr. and Jokic, they are a true title contender. And I think Bones Highland can give them a true guard to play without Jamal and with Jamal down the line, since they had to play Monty Morris and Austin Rivers without him and Barton in the playoffs. I think the Suns will win the West. They are my pick, but I do like that Nuggets value at plus 1,100. I'm going with Bucks Suns part 2 in the NBA Finals, and I'll go Bucks in 6 again. Same result. So that does it for today's podcast. I'm going to tweet out my picks for tonight and the futures I just gave and my season win total projections for the Eastern and Western Conference. So keep it locked to at Mark Henry Jr. _ and at the Painted Lines for those tweets. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of the Tough Cover. Click and enjoy the winners.